Leadership is often associated with taking charge, making decisions, leading from the front. But great leadership also means knowing when to step back, listen, follow the lead of other people. Today, we're talking about a crucial aspect of leadership, which is when leaders should follow.
This is the Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher, the forum for leaders, champions, and dreamers.
There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Sometimes going far, what that means is letting others lead the way. Meaning, as a leader, we don't always have to be the one out front. And to break this down today, we will discuss why following is important. We're going to talk about examples of when leaders should follow and how, as a leader, you can become an amazing follower. And how becoming an amazing follower can elevate your leadership impact, which is almost contrary to a lot of belief of this leader as follower. Well, Jeff, because I thought I was the leader, I need to be out front. I would say you're probably right the majority of the time, but there are strategic times in leadership when we become follower, we can have even more impact. So let's start by talking about why following is an essential leadership skill. Following builds trust. It empowers the team that you're leading. When leaders show that they're willing to follow, it creates a culture where everyone's voice matters. Now we're not saying, look, as leader, I am the voice. By doing this and becoming follower, we're giving voice to everybody else. We're saying, look, everybody on the team is empowered to some degree to have a voice. Following builds trust. It empowers teams. It encourages innovation. Following allows other perspectives to surface. I've seen this time and time again. When we become follower and we let there become space on the team, you start seeing innovation. You start seeing your team rise up and start to create very creative solutions. The other thing that it does is it models humility. When you're following, you're humble. And what you're telling your team is, I'm ready to learn. I'm a leader that's a learner. I don't have all the answers. A leader who's willing to follow demonstrates that they're open to learning from other people, regardless of rank. You know, this isn't, hey, I have the rank on my chest, and so I'll be the one doing the talking. No, whenever you become follower as leader, you say, look, I can learn from everybody on this team, and I want to. The second thing that we're going to talk about here is, why do we get this wrong sometimes as leaders? Why is it sometimes that we can't take the back seat and become follower? Well, I will tell you that the number one reason that this happens is it's rooted in insecurity, quite frankly. And we sometimes get fearful that we're going to lose authority. Some leaders worry that following, it's going to make me appear maybe weak. I don't want to come off as indecisive. This fear can prevent a leader from stepping back when it's most needed. So we have to let go of this fear of losing authority and losing control. The other reason why is overconfidence, or maybe even a little bit of ego. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not even saying that you're arrogant. But sometimes as leaders, we can let our ego step in. We can become overconfident at times. Leaders who believe that they must always have the answers, they might struggle to trust other people to lead. They might struggle to take this back seat as follower. This can stifle team dynamics and innovation, though. Here's the other reason that maybe there's some angst about becoming follower, is that maybe the leader just doesn't understand their role completely. Maybe they're new at this. Maybe nobody ever really explained the whole leadership dynamic to a leader. And maybe that's even you listening today. Many leaders assume their role is solely to direct, make decisions, give orders, throw out the assignments, and they miss the collaborative aspect of leadership altogether. This could be a big, big miss. We don't always have to be the one out front that's barking the orders and telling people what to do. Here's the other thing that you need to think about as to why might this be a pitfall for you. There's pressure to perform in leadership, right? This could be the very thing. And it's rare that this pressure goes away. We got to put up results, right? There's a lot of pressure. And in high pressure environments, leaders might feel compelled to take control, even when it would be maybe at times wiser to rely on your team and their expertise. Because again, we don't have all the answers. But when the pressure is high, we might feel this overwhelming need to take control. And look, I'm speaking to myself here. I can be a control freak at times. You know, as leaders, we probably got in our role because we've won a lot as individuals. And so there's this natural tendency to have this belief system of nobody's going to do it better than me. In many cases, these high pressure environments, they lead to micromanagement. Micromanagement is never a good thing, right? We want voices. Now, look, as a leader, you're going to have to filter the voices a little bit, but we do not want to stifle the voices of our team. So let's talk about some examples that would be great dynamics, perfect environments of when you as a leader should take this follower mindset. The first time that the first scenario that I want to give you of when should you consider being follower is when somebody on your team has more expertise. I think that goes without saying, but we have to have this level of awareness. You know, during the planning of the D-Day invasion in World War II, General Eisenhower did not insist on his own ideas, but actively sought input from his team of advisors, fellow military leaders, not just from the United States. He went even into the Allies. There was a specific person that he relied on. His name was Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, and there was also General Bradley, that he sought their feedback. He sought their advice. Can you imagine planning for D-Day? I don't know if anybody could ever do that perfectly. But can you also imagine the stress that comes with this? I think what he did was perfect. He said, look, we can't afford to get this wrong. I need to get other voices. You see, Eisenhower recognized that no single individual could possess all the expertise that was going to be needed for such a complex mission. This operation that nobody even knew exactly what a great outcome looked like. But by trusting his team, getting the right people around him, following their advice on very specific tactical decisions, he ensured the Allies coordinated a successful invasion, albeit with a lot of loss. This decision, it fostered collaboration, it boosted morale. Can you even imagine being in this kind of high pressure? I mean, we have high pressure compared to what? Compared to planning a D-Day invasion? Most of us are never going to ever feel that kind of pressure. This is a great reminder to recognize expertise that's on your team and let those with the knowledge take the lead. Look, I just got to experience this firsthand in my own life for the last 30-some minutes. You know, right before we hit record on this podcast episode, guess what? We had a major malfunction in the studio. If you ask me right now what went wrong, I couldn't even begin to tell you. All I know is I was hearing things from Brad like, well, it's a little bit scratchy. Well, the laptop's rebooting. Well, you know, the flux capacitor needs cranked, you know, whatever, right? I don't even know. But all I knew was I'm no help. Matter of fact, there was one point in time that I said something like, did you try taking that wire out and plugging it back in? You know, if you could have seen the look on Brad's face, it was almost like, hey, why don't you just go prepare leadership content and let me take care of what's going on in the studio? That's not my time to shine. That is not the time. A little bit of high pressure. We're under some time restraints today, but I'm thankful that we're not invading on D-Day. Do not take the bait to micromanage under high pressure. Here's another opportunity. When it presents itself, you're going to know, hey, now's the time to maybe follow. Crisis situations, which could also be defined as high pressure. But when I think of crisis situations, I can't help but think of President John F. Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Have you read about this? Most of us have. I just got done watching the documentary on Netflix. It was amazing to think about all the meetings that they had and the pressure. I mean, We were on the brink of nuclear war. When U.S. intelligence revealed Soviet missiles in Cuba, the stakes got really, really high. And JFK actively sought and followed the advice of the executive committee, of the National Security Council. These were people that knew stuff, right? Now, look, he had final say, he had final call. While some members, you know what, they urged him, you know what, we need to strike, and we need to strike hard, and we need to strike right now. That was voices that he was hearing in his head. President Kennedy ultimately followed the more cautious recommendations of the Secretary of Defense, who was McNamara at the time, and the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, to pursue a naval blockade and negotiate versus let's start dropping bombs. I don't know how you go about making that decision or even knowing which one is right. But this is a great opportunity in a crisis situation to follow. And that's what he did. Ultimately, he made the decision, but he got the right people around him. This decision became a textbook example of crisis management and demonstrated the value of seeking diverse perspectives. And I'm certainly glad that he did. Another example of when a leader should follow is when you need to encourage ownership. This is going to happen a lot in our leadership tenure. Maybe you should consider allowing a low-tenured manager to lead a presentation because they need to gain confidence. They need to gain experience. Stepping back in these kind of moments, it's going to empower that low-tenured person to step up. And listen, if you're listening today and you are a parent of children that are entering adulthood, you know exactly what I mean. You know, parenting adult children is way different than parenting toddlers or teens. I mean, this is a totally different dynamic. This is this moment in time that you're like, well, I guess I got to push them out of the nest. Let's see if they fly, and they crash. And you got to kind of sit back and watch it, right? This is the time to lead as follower, not lead from the front. You know, I can't continue to tell my 20-something-year-old children, hey, don't forget to wear a coat. Like, no, you got to just go and be cold. You're 20-something years old, right? We have to be follower here. Support? Yeah. Guide? Certainly. But we can't be leading from the front in these scenarios. We have to empower other people to be who they've been created to be. Here's another time that you have to do it. When you need fresh perspective. What we don't want ever is to become stagnant in our leadership, stagnant in our business. We need diverse perspective. You remember Franklin D. Roosevelt and the Brain Trust? Have you ever heard about this? If you haven't, Google it. If you're a leader, please research this. It's amazing, and it's a great example of this. When President Roosevelt became president during the Great Depression, the U.S. faced unprecedented unemployment, widespread poverty, and a collapsing economy. Traditional approaches, they weren't working. We in this moment, the president needed innovation, new ways of doing things. This is what was needed at the time. What always worked wasn't working. What got us here wasn't getting us there. Recognizing the need for these fresh perspectives, FDR assembled an informal group of advisors that he coined the Brain Trust. These were economists, lawyers, people that were social reformers. They weren't part of your quote-unquote typical political establishment. But he encouraged them. He challenged them to find, go beyond the conventional thinking and propose new ideas to address the nation's crisis. And by following the insights of this diverse group that he built, our president, Roosevelt, he implemented new programs that never existed before, like Social Security, like different public works projects, banking reforms. The Brain Trust's varied backgrounds, it led to creativity. It led to innovation. It led to new solutions that traditional policymakers probably would have never considered because their brain wasn't even wired that way. FDR's willingness to follow unconventional ideas of this brain trust, it demonstrated the power of seeking fresh perspectives in the times of crisis. It highlighted his humility. He was screaming, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answers. And he's also telling the world at this point and showing us a great example of how to lead through collaboration. So how can you practice following effectively? Well, there's things that you need to do. You got to adopt a learner's mindset, meaning I don't have all the answers. I need to learn more. I'm going to approach situations with a level of curiosity, interest, and willingness to grow. I'm going to ask questions. I'm not going to become a dictator. Instead of directing a solution, ask, what do you all think is the best course of action? Ask questions to your team. Even if you think you have the answer at 99.9%, ask anyway. Be present as a leader. Be supportive. Actively participate when you are following. This doesn't mean that you're checked out. You're still actively participating as a follower. This shows your team that you're engaged, that you're invested. Following doesn't mean that you check out. You're still engaged. And by the way, know when to step back in, because that might be necessary. Balance following with stepping in to guide, hey, does this situation need a little bit of support? Do I need to fan the flame here? Balance this following with stepping in. Now look, this is leadership tact. I don't have a formula for you, because you might be saying, well, Jeff, you just told me to step out. Now you're telling me to step back in. You got to use a level of discretion. What I don't recommend is we overwhelm people by micromanaging. But we certainly are, there's times that when we do step back in, it's not to micromanage. It's to support, it's to guide, and it's to ask great collaborative questions to help people come to solutions. Do this in a very, very collaborative way. Listen, as we wrap it up, understand following is not a weakness. It's not a strike to your ego. It's a strength that builds trust. It empowers other people. It drives amazing results. I've given you some examples of scenarios that hopefully none of us will ever have to lead through. This works. This week, I want to challenge you. Look for opportunities to follow someone on your team. Show them that you trust their expertise. And you trust them as a leader, even without the title that they might carry. You might be surprised at the results. Appreciate you all listening. Hey, listen, if the show is adding value to you, the best compliment that you could ever give me, share the episode with another leader in your life. Remember, great leaders know that sometimes the best way to lead is to actually follow. Until next time, follow well and keep turning that pressure into potential.
The Champion Forum Podcast with Jeff Hancher. Lead, inspire, win.